It's 6:30 and I'd like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that the City of Winkler is situated on Treaty 1 land, the home of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the OJ Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that have been made on these territories and acknowledge that harms and mistakes have happened in the past. We dedicate ourselves to a future based on respect of all peoples, including Indigenous communities, and a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, moving forward to a harmonious, prosperous future together. On that note, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Andrew?
Second, Marvin, thank you. Any changes to that agenda? Not seeing any. All approved? Carried. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of February 28th, 2023 be adopted. Mover?
Peter.
Don Fair and Peter. Any comments on those minutes? All in favor? And that is carried. Looking at our correspondence, we have one piece there. A budget letter from the Minister of Municipal Relations. We've had an opportunity to take a peek at that. Obviously, this is something that, for us, has been a long time waiting for, and it goes back to writing a decision of 2016 to hold funding in a world where where the needs on our funding never decrease. So this is a really good thing to have. Any additional comments on that?
Nope.
Moving on then, be it resolved that accounts payable in the amount of $307,581,078 as approved by the Finance Committee be approved for payment. Mover?
Andrew?
Second?
Don Friesen.
As always, you see the check register attached. Any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that Council authorizes Manitoba Hydro to install 60-watt colonial post-top luminaires at Yellowstone Trail. The annual energy charge will be an additional $697.44 plus applicable taxes to the City of Winkler. Mover?
Andrew?
Seconder?
Marvin.
As you can see by the attachment there, it shows you what we're adding and where we're adding them. Additional questions?
These are the blue ones? They're terrible.
I think
Those are faulty lights from,
Oh, the blue ones?
Manitoba.
Oh,
they have
yeah.
lots to replace though.
Okay.
Well,
I
they're-
believe that. 'Cause
they're
they
busy
just-
working on
lighting is
those.
terrible. Okay, it's good. I like it.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Continuing on to police and fire. Be it resolved that the Winkler Fire Department report of February 2023 be received for information. Mover?
Don?
Second?
Michael?
Any comments on that, guys?
Well, we are very blessed to say that February numbers have gone down significantly from
Good.
January. So we were going on the wrong trend in January, and in February, very, very fortunate that we're having a lot fewer calls.
Hopefully that's part of a newer trend to go back
Yes.
down again after a record year last year and then the very strong January. It was starting to become a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
That's half of last year's February.
Yep.
It's good.
It's very nice to see. Anything further? All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that Winkler Council does not object to the approval of subdivision number 4190-23-8268, being a plan of subdivision within the collaborative planning area, subject to the City of Winkler being added to the RM of Stanley and Owners Development Agreement, caveat, dealing with municipal services, infrastructure, or land use restrictions. Mover?
Marvin.
Second?
Don Friesen.
You see it there, and you see the shared notes as well. Does that leave any other questions that we need? Any additional information required?
I think it's a testament to the style of collaboration between two municipalities that we have something like this coming forward. So thanks to our staff for being that way.
All those in favor? And that is carried.
And I think we need to go back to 6.2.
I missed one there? Yes, I did.
Oh, yeah.
Be it resolved that Winkler Fire Department Committee minutes for the March 8th, 2023 meeting be adopted. Mover?
Don? Fair?
Second?
Michael.
Comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Andrew. Be it resolved that the Discover Nature Sanctuary Committee minutes for the January 1st, 2023 meeting be received for information. Mover.
Peter?
Second.
Don?
Michael got you by a little bit.
Good.
Peter, any comments on those minutes?
I'm no longer involved, but it looks like they're still doing a lot of work and moving forward with signage and just making sure everybody is taken care of there. It's
That's
a good
always
good place to visit.
Yeah, and always got one step further, right?
Yeah.
Every time we get a report, it's like, okay, now we're gonna do this, now we're gonna do that. It's amazing.
Humbling for you to see that even with you gone, they can still keep going, eh?
And they still manage to keep the wheels turning, yeah, that's good.
All in favor? And we're carried. Moving then into delegations and hearings. Be it resolved that this meeting of council recess for the purpose of holding public hearings. Mover.
Don Friesen.
Second.
Marvin?
All those in favor? Carried. And Jody?
Yes, sir. Just before we start public hearings, I'll give a little bit of information on how we run our public hearings. Generally, I introduce them in advance for each public hearing. After that, and I may provide additional information to council if needed. And then after that, Mayor Siemens will ask if there's anyone who would like to address council regarding the hearing. And the council has, or the mayor has the right to limit time to 10 minutes, after which council may also ask some questions of the presenter. When you do speak, we ask that you come up to the podium and state your name and address, and then you may speak to the matter. Our first public hearing is a conditional use hearing, but for the financial plan hearing, that would be for people who are eligible voters within the city of Winkler to be able to speak to the financial plan. And then we'd ask all questions or comments from the public are to be directed to the mayor from the podium. And then after all registrants have been heard, the public hearings will be closed, and at that time, the council will vote on motions regarding the public hearing. So with that, I'll start our first one. This is a conditional use application, CU 2023-002, under Winkler zoning bylaw number 2271-21. The applicant is Elvin Thiessen on behalf of owners Harville Homes Limited. The request is in order to use existing space as a place of worship. And a place of worship is a conditional use in the CC zone in which this building is located. So you have a map showing the location, and all of the notices have gone out for this public hearing as required by the Act, and we have not received any objections at our office.
Thank you, Jody. I see the proponent is here. Do you have anything further to add to what we have? Okay, Alvin has stated he has nothing further to add. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this conditional use? I don't see anybody else here. Does council have any questions that they'd like to ask? Clarifications?
This has been a place of worship before, right?
Don't think so.
Don't think this one has been.
Has it?
I believe it has been, right, Alvin? Okay.
No, okay,
Okay. The proponent said this has indeed been a place of worship before.
okay.
Good memory, Pete.
The gray hair.
We have anything further here before we close the hearing? Be it resolved, the public hearing for conditional use number CU 2023-002 be closed. Mover?
Peter?
Second?
Michael?
Michael, all in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that council approve conditional use number CU 2023-002. Mover?
Andrew?
Second?
Don Friesen?
Any other questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Moving then into the financial plan.
Okay, for our financial plan, we're required to have a public hearing where we can have input from the public. As long as I've been here at the city, I've not seen this many people here for a financial plan and presentation, so it's good to see that there's people here to whom we can make the presentation.
Absolutely.
So thank you for those of you that have come. David Martins is our Director of Finance and Administration, and he's done the work of putting together the budget. All of our directors contribute from their departments, and then David puts the final budget together. This is something that our council has deliberated on a number of times now. We have sessions in the fall, and then again early in the year where we go over the budget with our council. And then when all of that is ready, we come up with the final plan. And I will give it over to David to introduce that any further. And I think you're going to put your presentation on the screen as well. Okay.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out. Just like Jody said, this is the biggest crowd I've ever had, so very thankful. Usually it's one or two, mostly one. So I was always thankful for at least one person, so I'm very happy to have a larger crowd today. So today we want to cover the financial plan for the city of Winkler for the 2023 year. And we will take a look at assessment. We will touch a little bit and talk about assessment, how that changed from the last year to this year. We'll talk about what our budget is, our operating budget. We will cover a little bit about our asset management plan and what our long-term goals are here at the City of Winkler. We will talk about budget increase, mill rate change, but also at the end, what does it mean for me as a taxpayer at the City of Winkler?
It's not coming through very well on the screen. We'll just get it a little closer.
Okay, no problem. How does my tax bill change once I receive it in late spring, early summer, when I compare it to the one that I received in 2022? Before we dive into 2023 numbers, I'd like to take a moment to look back to last year. So these are amounts, grants and donations that we as the City of Winkler received last year from the federal government, provincial government, from local businesses, from people around and from Winkler that supported the City of Winkler. Some of these projects, as you can see, are city-run projects. Some of them are, as for example, the golf course. People donated towards these kind of projects that helped the City of Winkler to keep taxes low. I mean, this amount of 4.38 million, just imagine if we would not have the support from the federal provincial government, this would be an amount that we would have to put onto the tax bill if we wanted to remain the same level of service that we currently have. Last year was another year of growth for the City of Winkler. On the left graph, you can see the total residential permits that were pulled in 2022. The blue color indicates the single-family permits, then the orange one is a two-family, and the green one being the multifamily And on the right side, you can see the total value in permits. Even though it decreased slightly from 2021, we had over 37 million in permits that got pulled in 2022, and over 17 million of that represented the residential sector. In my introduction, I just mentioned already that we would talk a little bit about assessment. And 2023 is a reassessment year. And what that means, the province usually every 2 years, they reassess the assessment of our homes. And I'm sure you get a notice in the mail from the province indicating this is the assessment, this is how much it changed. And for the last 3 years, they have not done it because of COVID. They did not do it in 2022. And so they moved it now to 2023. From now on, it will happen again every 2 years. But so since 2023 is a reassessment year, you can see now our overall property value grew by over 13%. So that means our total assessment that we had in 2022 grew by 13.31%. And now, obviously, since that grew, we have a larger assessment base to put the taxes against. Overall total assessment, 26% are commercial properties, 61% are residential, and 13 other, including, for example, churches, schools, or institutional buildings, even something like the city hall here. So what is our assessment for the city of Winkler? If you take a look at the left, to the left where you can see the 2023 numbers, right now the city of Winkler has a total assessment base of over $2 billion. So that means if you would total up every single house, every single business, everything that the city of Winkler has, it should come close to a value of $2 billion. So that's a total assessment. That's what we use to put the mill rate against to come up with a total budget or the tax dollars that we can raise. The blue bar is our residential assessment, and then the orange bar, that's our commercial assessment. So our commercial assessment is just over 500 million, and the residential is sitting between $1 billion and $1.5 billion. The actual thing I want to highlight on this graph is you can see here, oh, I can move away, right? So let's say if you would start on that orange line, you can see that that's the commercial line. And that shows you by percentage how much the assessment changed for commercial, for example. So you can see in 2021, 2022, for both those years, it stayed below 5%. Meaning those were years we did not have a reassessment year. So that means only the growth was included, but they never reassessed the value. They never increased the value. But now you can see it's sitting between 5 to 10. It's actually just over 7% this year. So that means our commercial assessment grew by just a little over 7%. But if you can take that and compare that now to residential, the residential line is the blue line. That is way over 10%, over 15%, I mean, close to 20. It's around 17% that our residential assessment grew at the city of Winkler for 2023. And so when you look and you compare these two lines, you can see that overall residential assessment had a larger increase than commercial assessment. And I'm sure if you have followed the market a little bit during COVID, how the housing market went through the roof. And that's what the province uses as an indication on where the assessment should be. So when later on in the presentation, when we talk about the tax increase for 2023, we have to take this a little bit into account because on average, I will always talk about an average input, but on average, residential properties will receive a larger tax increase than commercial properties. And you might ask why? Well, exactly because of the assessment change. On average, commercial properties receive a lesser assessment increase than residential properties. I also like to take a moment to talk a little bit about asset management. And this is the asset management plan that we have for the city of Winkler. We just talked about that the city of Winkler city itself has $2 billion of assessment that we use for the tax base, including all houses and business and so on. But we as a city of Winkler, we own infrastructure of over $356 million. And this is our infrastructure replacement value. So that means, for example, if a road needs to be replaced, renewed, that will be included in this amount. If a sewer line, water line needs to be renewed or replaced, that's included in this amount. Facilities, buildings, and so on. And you can see the breakdown on the pie chart. Almost 100 millions is for facilities, close to over 90 millions is for roadway systems. Water and wastewater systems represent to a total of over 120 millions. And this is an amount that we know as the city of Winkler that we have to take care of. We know all our assets won't last forever. Eventually, every asset will break and every asset has to be replaced. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens. And when I talk about now a tax increase for 2023, later on in the presentation, I will highlight that number as well. It's not necessarily that the tax increase that we're talking about in 2023, that represents only the needs that we have in 2023. A lot of it, and I again will highlight those numbers later on in the presentation, a lot of it goes into, you could call it a savings account. That's money set aside for exactly what we can see here. Because we know the road might not have to be replaced in 2023, but we know already on our plan, and based on the condition of the road, it will very likely be have to be replaced in 5 years from now. So if you don't put money aside today, you might not be ready in 5 years from now. It's similar to your furnace at home, let's say. If you move into a home and your home is not a brand new home anymore, you know that at some point I have to replace that furnace. So do I put money aside for that furnace and be ready when it needs to be replaced or not? And so this is basically showing you all the furnaces that we as the city of Winkler have to look after. So you might ask yourself, we have a total asset or infrastructure base of $350 million, but where is the city of Winkler sitting right now? Are we fully funded? Do we have a deficit? Where are we right now? So this is a graph now that shows you where we should be and where we are. The blue line, that indicates the total dollar amount of what the city of Winkler should put towards the asset management plan. And that sits just over $8 million. So now if you would take $8 million and you put that each year into the asset management plan, you would have a fully funded asset management plan. Where are we right now? That's the green line. So the green line shows you where we are right now. It's close to the blue line, but it's not fully where the blue line should be. And this now, the graph that you see here, assumes a 1% increase towards the asset management plan each year, which represents $120,000. So that means if you, right now, 2023, we put $120,000 in. So if you keep on doing that in 2024, and we keep on adding $120,000 to the asset management plan, and we do that for the next 25 years, we do have a fully funded asset management plan. And we know once that road needs to be replaced, once that sewer line needs to be replaced, we will be able to replace it and not cut the level of service or actually abandon the street or, in the worst case, go back to gravel. We know it. We can still put asphalt on or concrete on, whatever needs to be happening. So then the orange line in the bottom just shows you that for now, obviously, because we have a little bit of a capital deficit, we will not be able to make that up in all 1 year. That the gap is too large, the amount is too large, so it takes some time to chisel away on your deficit. But in 25 years from now, if you keep on doing just what I just said, we will be able to reach a point where that line again, even though it dips down for a little bit, comes back up and hits that zero mark, where we will be able to say we have a fully funded asset management plan. So what is our mill rate for 2023? And the mill rate for 2023 is 13.302. It went down from 2022. Why did it go down again? Because the assessment went down. Because the assessment goes up, that's why the mill rate can go down, even though overall the budget increased. The debt management for the city of Winkler, this year we started with a total debt balance of $25.35 million. That was the total debt that we started at. And we will end in December with a total balance of $23.52 million. In between, you can see our 5 debentures that we currently have on our books. 2 of them will be paid off this year, and Fire Hall will be paid off next year. Average interest rate sits at right now at 3.94%. This again shows you a graph on how our debt compared to reserves, compared to our total budget. So you can see again, if you look at the orange line, how our debt went down to 2018. That's when we added the exhibition center debenture on, so it had a major jump. In 2019, it slightly went down again because obviously we made payments, and then it went up again. That's when we added the wastewater treatment facility debenture. And now again, it goes down to the 23.5 million that we just saw. You can see the budget, how it actually went up from 2013 being under 15 million, in 2023 being just over 22 million right now. And then the reserves, how it relates to the budget as well. And you might ask, when you look at this right now, why is it dipping down now from 2022 to 2023? Well, it's dipping down now because we have some major infrastructure expenses that will come up in this year, including the wastewater treatment facility, including that we are getting ready for water treatment plant expansion and so on. And there is some other project that I will highlight as well later on in the presentation, like the roads. So what is our total budget? The total budget for this year is $22,316,295. So this is our total budget, operating budget that the City of Winkler is able to work with. But not all of that is being levied onto the taxes. 66% is only being levied, and 34% is being raised through other revenue. And I will talk about that in my next slide. So this is the 34% that I just talked about, or the 7.5 million. So how is that being made up? So 400,000, the City of Winkler is being able to raise through out of its taxes. So basically, if someone builds a house or if a business builds a shop here in Winkler, it was not an assessment, or it was not a building that was at that point included in our overall assessment base, which is being added on top. So roughly, we should be able to generate 400,000. It's an estimate, but 400,000 through added taxes. Then almost 2 million are being generated through protective fees and fines, and a grant that we received from the province of Manitoba for policing. Then we have almost 1.8 million also as support from the province and from the federal government. And we have almost 900,000 in recreational user fees coming in from the arena, pool, and campground and so on. Other revenue, looking at 900,000, that's mainly the amount that we receive from the province as well for a recycling rebate. Then the sales, that's industrial land sales. Our estimate for this year is 400,000. And then our investment is sitting at 1.4 million. That is just our bank account. The savings that I talked about before, our reserves are sitting in a bank account, and we have an estimate of 1.4 million to receive an interest. This is a breakdown of our operating budget and how it breaks up into each department. And you can see, starting with administration, moving on to police, fire, transportation, and so on, how that's being built up. This is the same information, just showing you the breakdown by percentage. And the one item that I like to highlight is transfer to reserves, the one that you see on top at 17%. That's the amount that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation when we talked about asset management. That's the amount that is not necessarily spent this year. It's not part of the operating expenses. It's an amount that's being transferred into, you could say, into your savings account. And that is an amount that's being set aside for capital upgrades or expenses that we will know will come up in the future. Some of them come up in 2023, but most of them will come up in the future that we can prepare for our asset management. So we talked a lot about dollar amounts, we talked about assessment changes. Now we get more into what it really means for an actual taxpayer. We talked about the mill rate. The budget increase is 9.15%. The average impact on a tax bill for 2023 in City of Winkler will be 5.9%. Again, this is the average. Like I indicated before, for residential taxpayers it will be higher. For commercial taxpayers it will be most likely be lower. So if you take now an example of a residential home and you use an assessment of $275,000 for 2022, because it was a reassessment year, the assessment changed to about $299,000 in 2023, and if you take that assessment, only 45% of that assessment is taxable, so that gives you the portion assessment. You times that by the mill rate, which gives you then your municipal taxes, and you have to add your waste fee on there, because with the City of Winkler, for every residential homeowner, you pay your waste collection, you pay a waste collection fee instead of having it on your assessment. It's being broken out in the bottom. It shows you $110. That's what it showed you in 2022. For 2023, it will be $135. Why did it go up? Two reasons. Our rebate for recycling went down, plus inflation. I think we all have felt inflation, and so do we here at the City of Winkler as well. Overall, on average, the municipal tax should go up by $108.27, again, which represents the 5.96% increase. So what does that $108 stand for? Just to give you kind of an idea, could be 32 medium coffees and a donut, it could be 4 trips to Winnipeg, it could be 7 meals at Subway. So what do I purchase with my taxes? You might sit here and say, okay, you talk about that I need to pay $1,900 to the City of Winkler, but what do I get back? Like, what do I get back from the City of Winkler? So this is a breakdown of the services that you receive back from the City of Winkler. So about $60 or 3% would go to a general government services, which includes the admin department, finance department, the IT department, council, HR department, and so on. Then you would pay roughly $320 for police service, for police protection. You would pay $64 for fire protection, $337 for transportation services, which is for making sure that the streets are cleared, for sweeping the streets, for grass cutting, for street lights, for patching, all of that. For planning service, you would pay $63, economic services $54, recreation services, which includes the pool, arena, campground, so on, would be roughly $350. For fiscal services, you would pay $220, and that amount includes our debentures at the City of Winkler that I talked about, or mortgages, you could say. And then the transfer to reserves, you would pay $350 of your total tax that you would pay. Again, would be transferred into the savings account. It would not be necessarily spent this year. And then, obviously, your waste disposal service or the fee that you would pay on your tax bill would be sitting at $135. So now we've covered our general operating budget, but we also have a utility budget. I guess we all receive utility bills 4 times a year as well. Our utility budget is just over $4.1 million, and that's being raised through water rates and sewer rates. And you can see just some capital projects that we have lined up on the utility side, just to highlight a few. You can see them here: utility equipment upgrade, some lift station upgrade. We want to finish our George Street Reservoir Phase 2. Then we will have to do some well replacements. Like I mentioned before, we want to start on the water treatment plant expansion and continue with our sewer relining and manhole restoration. All of that total comes to a 2.5 million budget. This is my last slide, just to highlight a few projects. We want to do intersection upgrade on Main Street and Stanley for a total of roughly $525,000. We want to extend Park Street from Highway 14 to Northlands for a total budget of $800,000, and we want to do Pembina East Pathway for a total of $450,000, which will eventually connect the Rheinfeld pathways with the City of Winkler sidewalks. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I very much appreciate for you guys that you all came out to listen to our presentation. If you have any questions, this would be the time now to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. As has already been noted, if you'd like to speak to the financial plan, this is your opportunity to do so. We would ask that anyone that speaks to the financial plan comes to the podium, states their name and their municipal address. Again, City of Winkler residents, City of Winkler voters are allowed to present to the financial plan.
Yeah, I'll connect back.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak to the financial plan? Please come to the podium, state your name and your municipal address, please. You're speaking specifically to the financial plan? And that is, what are you looking to present to us?
About the budget regarding the South Central Regional Library.
You have a question in that regard?
Yes.
Oh, please ask your question.
Name and address first, though.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm Karen Banman, I'm from Winkler,
Okay. Your address is?
18 Crocus Bay.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I hand this out for you?
You're looking to hand out information or to ask a question?
Information.
We're looking, at this point in time, you're speaking with regard to the financial plan and specifically asking questions with regard to the financial plan.
Yes, this regards to that.
By all means. Thank you.
I am here today to ask the question, how does this council justify spending taxpayer dollars that they know are being used to create an unsafe environment for our community? Why does council continue to fund the South Central Regional Library, which continues to purchase and distribute materials that contain child pornography and that instruct on sexual touching for minors? On December 13, 2022, you were presented with this specific communication for action. If the South Central Regional Library continues to engage in the illegal act of making pornography.
I'll interrupt you there, please. The library, based on the allegations that have previously been made, has retained legal counsel, has looked into it. The pieces that you're referencing do not come under that definition, so I'll ask you to not refer to it that way. I'll ask you to definitely ask the question on whether or not we choose to fund the library, but to refer to it to something that it is not is probably not appropriate at this point.
Well, I would like to present you with new evidence. And,
Excuse me,
okay.
please. You're not directing this meeting, please, Christine. I'll ask you not to direct the comment. Thank you. Thank you. Christine, I'd like you to, or Karen, I'd like you to ask your question, please, if you have one.
Yeah, I will.
Please.
So, sorry, I lost where I went. So also attention was drawn to the authority to write bylaws that would parallel the Criminal Code of Canada and to prohibit obscene materials from being made available to minors through our public libraries or otherwise.
And again, I would direct you at this point to make those presentations to the library where that direction comes. Ourselves, we appoint 2 members to the board and provide operational funding, but we don't write the bylaws for the library.
Since that presentation, legal counsel has suggested that the materials presented to the library board fit the definitions of child pornography, and invitation to sexual.
And I would ask you to make that presentation to the library board where that information should go.
An invitation to sexual touching for minors, and that in doing so, these materials contravene the Criminal Code of Canada.
One more time, I'll interrupt you. This is specifically with regard to the financial plan. We're not looking for a second presentation. We've had this presentation. If, in fact, there is any concern of a legal nature, I ask for you to contact the police. If, in fact, you're looking for specific books, I would ask you to present to the library. That is where those decisions are made.
I'm also here to take a moment to clarify some confusion. So to
Sure.
begin with, All Boys Aren't Blue does not fall anywhere within
Excuse
the-
me, specifically to the financial plan, please.
is related to the financial plan. It just kind of explains where we're coming from.
Again, the question would be, if we choose to continue to fund the library, but any comments towards books that are on the shelf or not on the shelf is a comment that should be directed to the library.
Mayor Siemens, can I ask a question?
Not at this point. As soon as Karen is done, certainly you're allowed also to come.
May I allow to ask for him to ask?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's trying to get.
I'll get you to state your name and your address, please.
David Wall, 405 Red Oak Trail.
Excellent, thank you.
Karen is, I believe she's trying to give context to her question, so that the question that she's asking makes sense.
And we're speaking to allegations that have been proven to not be true.
Sure.
So if in fact you'd like to ask a question, please ask a specific question, but don't make allegations that have
Sure.
been proven not to be true.
If she changes the wording that she's saying from that it's pornography to there are members of this community who feel that it is pornographic.
Absolutely,
acceptable?
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay. So I'd like to take a moment to clarify some of the confusion. To begin, All Boys Aren't Blue does not fall anywhere within the realm of educational material.
Again, the book is not in the library. In fact, it's a digital-only book that is not in our library.
But it's available to anyone with a library card.
It is also available to anyone with an internet connection.
Yes. If you do not remember this book, I will remind you that it contains graphic descriptions of child-on-child sexual abuse and incest that are celebrated as a gateway to sexual maturity.
Again, you're continuing to walk down a path. It is...
In my opinion, I'll just add that.
Fair enough.
This book, as stated by the author himself, is a memoir manifesto, a statement of beliefs that he would like others to follow. All Boys Aren't Blue is available through our South Central Regional Library as an ebook. The South Central Regional Library's librarians curate these ebooks. To continue to ignore the fact that our library is purchasing fiction, manifestos, and memoir that contain written pornography,
In your
our
opinion.
is to skew reality. These books cannot be blanketed with the label education, in my opinion.
Correct.
The South Central Regional Library chooses and pays for access to these individual books with tax dollars that you allocate to them. Regardless of the child's age, with a South Central Regional Library card and a device, the child has access to ebooks like these. And because the local media continues to use the language sex ed, when in fact we are dealing with a different category entirely, the category of sex instruction. I will draw your attention yet to another example of what is being made available to our children at our South Central Regional Libraries. This is from the book, and I'm going to ask if I could, David, to read this part. I just can't do it. Would that be
I don't think we need to have a book read into the record.
No, just part of this
Specifically,
question.
no, thank you. I don't think we need to have a book read into here. What we do want to have, if you specifically have a concern with regard to that book, absolutely. You should make a point of stating the fact that you object to it. Definitely, straight in broad generalities, but to read an excerpt of a book, I don't believe that that serves any purpose here.
Sorry, very dry.
No problem.
I believe it's necessary to hear it because it really puts, like, it really helps understand what these books are about and what is in our library.
Again, if you have concern with a specific book, that should go to the library. That's the place for it. Here specifically today, you would suggest that based on your concerns, we should not fund the library. Is that correct? Am I putting words in your mouth at this point?
I will get there yet, but I I would say if they continue to fund or purchase these books that instruct minors to perform sexual acts, then I would say we should withhold funding.
Okay.
Okay. So, I would just ask if I could get David to read this part of this.
No, thank you.
For me.
No, thank you.
I have a question on procedure.
Excuse me, we're mid-presentation. You're actually, as somebody who is not a resident of the city of Winkler, can't specifically speak to it.
I do pay taxes. I've been-
You're a taxpayer with the city of Winkler? You are a voter with the city of
I
Winkler?
am not a voter, but I am a taxpayer.
Okay. I'll ask for some support there. I believe voters,
Eligible voters.
eligible voters are allowed to speak to the financial plan. So thank you.
This is from the book Let's Talk About It, and can be found on the shelves of the Miami branch. As you reach through
We're
your-
specifically speaking with regard to the Winkler branch and specifically towards that. So
the South Central Region.
I don't know that reading pieces of a book is necessarily going to be productive here.
As you read your booklet together with me, also note the 4 large graphic images on hands of penises, which include arrows and sound effects. The visual sex instructions for what I'm about to read.
Again, I think we've mentioned a number of times, reading excerpts from the book. You're welcome to ask a question and to make a case, but to read excerpts from the book, at this point in time, we're 12 minutes in to your presentation. I would ask that you ask the question that you have so that we can move on to other presenters who would like to ask questions as well.
Right, but I feel like I've been interrupted on several
Correct,
occasions.
and I've stated if you'd like to ask a question, please do so. I don't believe we need to read excerpts from the book.
Okay. At this point, okay, sorry, I'll skip that too.
Thank you.
So, Section 232, 1A of the Municipal Act states, councils are responsible for the safety, health, protection, and well-being of the people. This is your jurisdiction. The definition of obscene materials changes over time, but the courts have ruled that it is defined as material that violates accepted community standards. Keeping this standard in mind, I would like to draw your attention to this stack of signed petitions from community members of the South Central Regional Library. Please allow me to read the petition to you, signed by 1,796 taxpayers of this region.
This is the petition that has been emailed to council already, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Whereas the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 163, defines child pornography as, quote, a visual representation that shows a person who is under the age of 18 years and who is depicted as engaged in explicit sexual activity, or where the dominant characteristic is the petition of a sexual organ or the anal region of a person under the age of 18 years. And whereas Section 163 of the Criminal Code of Canada also defines child pornography as any written material whose dominant characteristics is the description of sexual activity with a person under the age of 18 years, or the written depiction of underage individuals engaged in explicit sexual behavior. And whereas Section 152 of the Criminal Code states that every person who for a sexual purpose invites, counsels, or incites a person under the age of 16 years to touch, directly or indirectly, with a part of the body or with an object, the body of any person, including the body of the person who whoso invites, counsels, or incites, and the body of the person under the age of 16 years is guilty of an indictable offense. And whereas the South Central Regional Libraries have children and youth, fiction and nonfiction materials that fit the above descriptions of child pornography, and instruction to sexual touching of persons under the age of 16 years. And whereas the South Central Regional Library Board has been made aware of the content of several books and has chosen to keep said books on the shelves and in their online selection of books. And whereas parents, guardians have authority over their children, they have the right and responsibility of custody, health and safety, education, providing food, caring for them, supervision, and physical and psychological protection. And whereas the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child, of which Canada is a signatory, states that governments and government entities, including libraries, shall respect the responsibilities, rights, and duties of parents, to provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child appropriate direction and guidance. And whereas Manitoba library policies, which call upon expression of knowledge, do not supersede the rights of a child, the rights of parents, or of a parent, nor the Criminal Code of Canada. And whereas Manitoba libraries, including the South Central Regional Libraries, lack the protocol to ensure parents can screen for any of the sexual content mentioned above, the lack of protocol contravenes parental human rights and is a violation of the Criminal Code of Canada to make them available. We, the undersigned, therefore, based on Canadian law, parental guardian rights, request that the juvenile books in all South Central Regional Libraries that display sexually explicit images, contain sexually explicit content, or instruct on sexual touching be removed from library stacks and from the online Sorry, I need some water.
No problem.
And from the online library system, and that a policy be put in place to ensure that sexually explicit materials and materials that contravene the Criminal Code of Canada are not made available to children and youth in the future. This is the outcry of our community, or of your community, that these materials violate accepted community standards. This is the attestation that a large community of citizens whose tax dollars fund the South Central Regional Library do in fact consider these materials to actively teach sexual touching to minors and to contain pornography and child pornography. To keep materials such as these in the library is to create an unsafe environment for children and to place them at undue risk. Based on this new evidence, these petitions, as a representative of these signatories, I'm again asking you to withhold funding from the South Central Regional Library and that you would discuss drafting new bylaws which ensure the safety of our children. Or at minimum, we are calling for one single public hearing in which all councils that fund the South Central Regional Library would collectively advertise, attend, and openly discuss the issue of safety, of tax dollars being used to purchase and distribute sexually explicit materials to children. The intention for this hearing would be that you would gather information by opening up discussion in order for community members to communicate, to express their opinions, to ask questions, and to clarify needs surrounding the issue of tax dollars funding the South Central Regional Library. And in doing so, that you would vote on resolutions related to the $211,947 of funding currently allocated to the South Central Regional Library for the 2023-24 fiscal year and onwards.
Thank you. You have the full paper copies of that petition as well? I'll ask you to present those to Jody.
Okay. And
If you're presenting them to us, then we would want to have them. Then they're presented to us to have. We do have them already digitally, as you've emailed. If you'd like to leave your petition at that point, we can certainly take that as well, because each member of council has received those. Jody has a copy, received them on the city's behalf as well. Thank you. I'll ask as well, because for you to grab an official objection sheet there, they're right there. Again, it'll ask you on that table there, it'll ask you for your name, your address, and in
The one on the
broad
right.
strokes, what the concern is.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to speak to the budget? Please, I'll ask you to come to the podium, and again, just to state your name and your address, please.
David Wall, 405 Red Rock Trail.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if I was going to come here and say anything today, so my context will be very brief.
Absolutely.
The context is there is case law that's being reviewed by a retained lawyer
Okay.
and being reviewed by the City of Winkler Constable in regard to these books and books like them. So with that context and the presentation I made December 13th, would the City of Winkler Council be unwilling to consider suspending funding of the South Central Regional Library until written affirmation has been sent to me regarding the completion of their investigation, which we discussed pursuant to the presentation that I made on December 13th, 2022?
Thank you for your question. I'll ask again that you also, as soon as Karin is done with it there, to note there as well. I will mention here, in terms of any community that has a library in it, we're required by law to continue to fund that library until such a time as we vote to basically reverse engineer the creation of the library. So any discussion we're having here today certainly doesn't affect this year's budget, because we're required through the Municipal Act to honor our obligations. Moving forward, if in fact there is new evidence that suggests that the opinion that's there today is not correct, without a shadow of a doubt, it would be a different discussion. I think as we go through this, you presented opinion on December 13th. You mentioned at that time you were walking that out further. My understanding is today that you're still doing so.
Yes.
When you have something that is actionable, again, definitely,
Absolutely, yeah. As we discussed, I would certainly send that to you.
absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor Siemens, point of clarification.
Please.
That requirement for funding falls under the Public Libraries Act, not the Municipal Act.
Thank you for that, Jody. Anybody further have a comment towards the budget? And please,
I'm working hard, just a resident of the city of Winkler.
Address?
address.
530 on Merlin Drive,
Thank you.
and I've got a good neighbor there. These situations, and I feel sorry for council, and I feel sorry for the rest of you.
It's a hard thing.
Just 2 weeks ago, I was asked to come to the Canadian Mennonite University in Winnipeg to speak on conflict resolution. It just reminded me of that today because, as I said at that point, withholding money in order to achieve a purpose creates a conflict, for whatever, either in defense of one or opposition to somebody else. The library that we have here in Winkler is a very valuable place for a lot of people. This is one area where there's some conflict in regards to these books. And I just want to reiterate, Mr. Mayor, the conversation that I've had with you previously, and I've also had with this group, that I think there's an easy resolution. The easy resolution is to make those books available for adults signed out and it addresses all the issues that they have here in regards to ages of 16 or 18 or whatever the case may be. But I do want all of us to be careful to demand something that maybe will come back to haunt us. In that respect, I am a firm believer of the Christian faith. I am a Christian, and I do object to these books. I want to make that very clear. I'm not here to defend council or the library, but I do want to say where I stand personally. However, the solution, I think, is relatively easy that I know all of these parties have heard about, and it would take a small adjustment to the policy within the library to deal with it. Simply take those books, put them on a higher shelf, and make them simply signed out by adults. And believe me, we cannot prevent porn from happening, and you watching a television show and you're perfectly able to see it. The last election, we had those books read to minors that were there, and people were holding their ears shut because they didn't want to hear the reading from the book. So I respect and appreciate the control as far as reading the material itself, because it's not appropriate. But I think as far as the financial plan is concerned going forward, that would not be my battleground. I think it's important the library is there. My wife, who passed away in 2014, had a very high regard for the library, used it immensely. And for that reason, my family decided that we would pay for the outdoor reading that we did.
Correct.
And so the library is of value, and I want, as a taxpayer, just to simply say the library is of value. Withholding, over $250,000 would break it, and I don't think that's the best solution. But I think there are other solutions that should be clearly followed up on, and to make that a reality as a possible solution for everybody in this room.
Thank you for your comments, Martin. You certainly touch on something very important. Any of the books that are in the library that are certainly of a sensitive nature, there are many who would view them as important. There are others who are offended by them. This conversation itself, going back now to that December 13th meeting, David, this is a particularly difficult conversation. And as we look to suggestions like you have, Martin, that is one of the suggestions that we actually have some capability of in terms of asking our board members to go back to the board to look to make some recommendations. Ultimately, we have 2 members at that table. We have 1/7 of the vote. And definitely when we look at some of those kinds of things, it's a suggestion well taken. Thank you very much, Martin. Is there anyone else who would like to? Please. Again, I'll ask you to come to the microphone though, Karen.
So, Karen Bannon.
Karen, am I mispronouncing that?
No.
I'm very sorry.
You're saying it right, I think.
I'm certainly trying.
Yeah, 18 Crocus Bay Winkler. I'm sure I'm
Please.
supposed to say it again. But I guess my concern, I think it's great that you're talking about the options. My concern with some of these books being made available just to adults is that there are pictures in there of children performing sex acts with other children or on themselves. So I don't know if that is appropriate for adults to look at as well.
Okay. Point taken. Thank you. And I think that comes back to the comments that David has in terms of some of the other things that he's pursuing that he believes has some legs and maybe we'll be able to move forward. Anybody else have comments to the financial plan? Does council have anything before we close hearing?
I want to thank the staff for having worked diligently on the plans, bringing it from all the different departments to the finance department, making difficult decisions, because I'm sure that if you would have gotten everything you wanted, the budget would be double or more than this. So you had to make choices of what you feel is possible and what is not possible, and then present that to council. So it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
I'll echo that as well. That asset management plan has been years in the making and been a struggle along the way with every different department to find ways to get to where we need to be, and commend you guys for where we're at today and looking forward to the future.
Thank you.
Okay,
Maybe one
any-
last note would just be that these presentations do get made available on our website. All the past years are there as well. If you go to our City of Winkler website and then to City Hall, and then applications and documents, you'll see all of our financial information there if anyone wants to look at those.
Thank you, Jody. As has already been mentioned, this budget process, at the best of times, is a difficult year. While it's certainly nice to have people here to see that presentation, it would be great that it was under slightly different circumstances, and hopefully as we figure these things out for next year, that all of you will again come to see. Because one of the challenges quite often that we have, and we present a $20+ million budget, and as David has already alluded to, he's typically preaching it to one or two people. So it is nice to see people taking an active interest in their community. We have a special community, and that's important. And to be able to protect that, to have people who are interested in that, that's important. So as much as we're trying to figure out a really difficult situation, I applaud each and every one of you for stepping forward into something that's difficult, but that you're passionate about. And I appreciate the respectful dialogue that we're able to have around this as we look to try to get to a resolution that makes sense. So thank you for that. Thank you, David, Jody, and the team for putting this together. It's a monumental undertaking. We do not take lightly the fact that we're spending $22 million of our taxpayer dollars on the services that we provide to our community. We take very seriously, now that we have an asset management plan that we really are starting to understand, we're taking very seriously the fact that we have some shortfalls and we have to fund them. Those are difficult pieces. I thank each one of you at council as we went through the planning process and looked at coming back with a request for additional dollars. That was not an easy place to get to, and I thank you that we got there. On that note, be it resolved that the public hearing for the 2023 financial plan be closed. Mover?
Don Fair?
Second.
Peter?
Further conversation? All those in favor? That is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2302-23 be given first reading. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Michael?
Comments? All those in favor? That is carried.
Henry, just going back one, the financial plan as well. 13.32,
Did I skip one?
I think so.
Be it resolved that the financial plan and capital budget for 2023 be approved. Mover.
Andrew?
Second. All in favor? The fact that I did those out of order, Jody, do we need to reread
Nope.
first reading?
No, we're good.
Excellent. Be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover?
Peter?
Second?
Marvin?
All in favor? Carried. That takes us to questions from the media and public.
Am I a public person?
Yes, you are. I'll get you to state your name, please.
Christine Ronsray from Somerset.
Excellent.
That was a really good presentation from the finance data. Yes, that was a very good presentation. It's nice to see that it's that original. That's great. I would just like to know, as a person who spends money in Winkler, and as a person who also has shares in business that pays taxes here in Winkler,
Yes.
I would like to know why those taxes are going to the funding of the books that are in the pamphlet. There are new books, and I really stress that you open that and you look at the illicit, I won't call it porn, I'll call it illicit pictures. And I would like you to open it up to slide 9. No. Part of me would like you to read it, and the other part of me would definitely not like you to read it. And I would like you to know that there's a lot of money being spent on that for kids. And I agree with Mr. Martin Herter, sorry. The library has provided such a service. And I mean, I'm gonna speak for myself because I take my kids there. But because this, as you can see, is the latest book on the shelves of the libraries that are being funded. And to say that it's in a different library like it's found in Miami. Because the libraries are all connected.
Right.
It can be brought here. In fact, I believe it is ordered by a person here in Winkler.
Okay.
And this is what is available to kids. So really take a look at it. Take a read. It gives you nightmares that your children are reading this. And that's what I'm offended that my dollars are going to. I can't bring my kids to the library. I can't support it anymore. And this was our haven. But I can't let this risk happen anymore. And this is what I'm paying for through my business taxes, through my spending here and supporting your community. I don't have community left to support. Please, please look at this. This is not what you want for your grandkids. This is not what you want for your kids. This is not what you would have wanted. In fact, this isn't a new thing, right? These acts aren't new. This is from before biblical time. I don't understand why we have to teach this now. I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of perverts that have figured it out themselves. That's how we got here. Now to teach it, to let you read about it. Where's Hugh Hefner? Why didn't we just invite him for sharing to our children? There's just so much depravity here that we are saying we're okay to put our money towards. And I know this was a budget meeting, so that's why I'm putting it towards that. I'm saying ethically, this is wrong. And I know you had the comment, Mr. Siemens, earlier in regards to the term pornography. That is a term that's won in court. I think we're beyond court. Not beyond. I mean, if it has to be won in court, it has to be won in court. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of men, I would say women, but there are no women there, right? We have a bunch of men who know ethically that this shouldn't be supported. And we're supporting it. And you're using my tax dollars for it. I'm not gonna speak for everybody else, but this is where my tax dollars are going. This is the community that I'm supporting. And I love Winkler. Anyway.
You had a question or a comment, I guess, in this situation?
Yes, my question is, when is this council going to really look at what exactly they're doing to their future?
Thank you for the question. Any additional questions, public or media? I will then go to be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned. Mover?
Michael?
Second? Pete Fraze? All in favor? carried.